Today we have Lieutenant General Michelle McGuinness, the Australia's Cybersecurity Coordinator, joining us on Future Secured. Thank you very much for taking the time to join Jason and I to talk about these really important issues that are facing the nation. So first of all, we'd love to dive back and to hear a little bit about your journey to the current role that you've got.
Well, thank you so much for having me. The journey, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure any of us, particularly in the military, can predict the path that we're on. I also don't believe there's one clear path. The role was only established around a year ago. I've certainly had a career that has been fascinating and challenging at every step, incredibly rewarding. In the military, we don't always choose our next roles, and it speaks to the value of having mentors or leaders who understand you.
Yeah, well, you've already had some excitement in the role from when you've started.
Pretty quickly.
Because I think first thing we met you was at RSA, and that was pretty early on in your tenure there, but that was pretty busy, but a good way of you to get a quick snapshot of the Australian cyber market, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So what do you think of RSA being the first sort of tour? Because you came from the US, just for background of other people, you were in the US before you got this posting to sort of come back. So that sort of was almost going straight back to the US for RSA. What did you sort of see and learn on your first tour there?
Yeah, that's right. I had come out of a posting over in Washington, DC, working with our allies over there. And certainly my team, within the month or so of starting the job, said RSA is a really important place to go. It turned out to be a fantastic couple of days, incredibly busy, meeting with so much of the cyber industry, and so many Australian companies and leaders were represented over there. So it was a great deep dive into the topic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great intensive learning period for me as well.
I think Tom, he went to water actually the first time, because that's the first time he'd been there. I've been there a few times before, and it is overwhelming when you first go there, because when you look at the floor, it is massive, isn't it? With all the vendors and everything on there.
Yeah.
It's just when you walk. The year before, not this year, but the year before, Wiz, one of the vendors had the Wizard of Oz as a stand. So they had a big balloon with Dorothy and the Wizard and all that sort of stuff. But everything on the floor, the noise, I think it overwhelmed Tom. I think when he got there, he sort of was like, sound and everything was just
I was delighted to be guided by some experts. It's not my first large US showcase though, having spent a few years there. Been to some fantastic forums, DODIS, which I was a part of for the last few years in the US intelligence community. They certainly know how to do it big.
One thing that really struck me was around the perspective it placed on the size of the Australian cybersecurity community and the place it was playing. So it's such a huge amount of businesses out there, and we're really just a small slice of that. So it's a real challenge for Australian cybersecurity businesses to export and to reach out and stuff like that. I mean, is that some experience you found?
Yeah, for sure. I've also had an experience since then engaging across our small, medium businesses and startups, and I'm so inspired by the sovereign capability that we're building. I do think it is hard to crack in, and I've had a number of those Australian leaders setting up small cyber capabilities talk about the challenges of cracking into that large market. It is part of our strategy. We do want to promote sovereign cyber capability for so many reasons, not just because it's the right thing to do across our economy, it's good for our economy, but it does speak to supply chain assurance and strengthening our own capabilities. By 2030, the ambitious vision of our strategy, which I think we can achieve, is to be a world-leading cyber-secure nation.
Yeah,
that requires us to have that professionalism, that baseline capability.
And that's what we're looking to do. So one of the things, and we can probably announce that here, I don't know if you mind, but we've acquired the assets for AusCyber, which was the DISA-funded sort of thing, and we're doing the Australian Cyber Network. And part of that is to build a innovation part. So a lot of people who've been successful previously, they're going to mentor in there. So, I've done a few startups myself, but we'll get, Mark Arena, who did Intel 471, and others to help guide the next generation through to try and meet that target. So everything we're aligning is with the strategy to say how can we collaboratively get together and deliver that strategy. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. It's actually reflective of what I see across the industry. I've been so inspired by the enthusiasm, the intellect, the professionalism of our industry folk who have seen the strategy and are seeking to achieve it.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's a fantastic strategy. It is a roadmap for the future, but it's going to take all of us to achieve it.
Absolutely.
And as I said, I've been incredibly inspired. So folks like yourselves leading forward, understanding the strategy and understanding the really important role that industry plays in achieving those ambitions.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I'm chair of the CSCAU, and this is not about me, it's about you, but for the SMB 1001 is something that with Claire O'Neill, we were talking about doing that as the health check for businesses, because was it 99.7% of small businesses in Australia, 200 employees or less. So it's the backbone of our economy. That's micro business in the US. But a lot of the stuff you've done so far, I've been really happy with, when you're talking about passphrases, strong passwords, password managers, MFA, updates when available. Those three things there, even if you just do the first two, you reduce over 72% of phishing attacks, just say as an example. So if people at home and small business can at least do that as a starting point, it's a great campaign you kicked off with that one.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was a great government campaign on Act Now, Stay Secure, and we'll continue to push those messages. You're right, a huge percentage of Australians are employed in small businesses, and they are the greatest target. And the kind of cost for a cyber attack for a small business can clearly be unbearable.
Yeah.
We want to get to a point where, as a nation, every individual, every business, every citizen is uplifted to build our resilience and reduce our attack surface. So those three things that you mentioned, MFA, complex passphrases, and updating software, they go a huge way. We've got data that tells us from our experts at the ACSC that tells us that will reduce our attack surface substantially.
Yeah, no, that's a good messaging, and I think, I always sort of say, we teach our kids to put a seatbelt on, brush their teeth. It's like, but they're having device in their hands often before they're even able to speak.
Yeah.
But they're not taught the basics of that. So if we get those sorts of things embedded earlier, because people are getting to the workplace and having to unlearn bad habits, right?
Yes.
But if we can start that process a lot earlier, and that sort of almost open up that career pathway, because one of the things with the study recently was 86,000 cyber jobs short by 2030. So part of what we're trying to do too is to help get that career pathway opened up. And the sooner we can get kids au fait with that sort of thing, the more that opens that pathway up as well.
Yeah, I think it's not just about awareness. It's about a cultural change.
Yep.
Like, we need to change our culture. If we lock our doors, lock our cars, put our seatbelts on, clean our teeth, then why aren't we locking up our identity online?
Correct.
That is a step change. I think part of the challenges have been IT has been seen as a technical field. It's either inaccessible or not my job. So I say often, cybersecurity is everyone's business. So if you connect to the internet, then cybersecurity is your business. And a big part of our job, I think, across government and industry, is making sure that it is accessible, making sure that it isn't intimidating, making sure that those tools are super simple. And we've tried to outline those three things we've talked about, MFA, passphrases and software. We've tried to specify exactly how you do that. We don't want anyone to be intimidated by these simple things they can do to make themselves more secure.
And it's all free, so even if you want to use a password manager, you can get a free password manager, whether it's Bitwarden, 1Password, LastPass, whatever, MFA, no cost, and updates for your software, no cost. So it's not that the government's pushing stuff that is the basis that we need to do. There's no cost to do it, right? And just people need to start getting in the habit of actually doing it. You don't go to kids, here's the keys to the car, off you shoot. You give them lessons and you teach them things beforehand. So I think we do need to take a couple of steps back, but by going that far back, we'll improve the future and hit that 2030 goal, hopefully.
Yeah, the strategy is broken up into 3 horizons. So we're in Horizon 1 right now, and it really is about strong foundations, which is why we're just trying to uplift everyone, every Australian in this phase, so that we can build from there. But so, we continue to push those messages, and I'm so pleased to have industry partners, collaborators across the country helping those messages. They're really important.
Yeah, we've got to get foundational, because that's the thing, is that when you start a business too, people go and they register their business for tax and do all those sorts of things. But we want to have that cyber built in right from the start too. So if you have it foundationally, it's not something that you have to build in later. Because I've seen businesses that go to actually raise capital or VC funds, and they go there and they say, how's your cyber posture? And that's the thing that lets them down. They can't raise the capital because they don't have their cybersecurity in place. So it's key also for businesses, at all stages, but it should be built in from the start, right? And those basics should be the bare minimum.
And I don't want to dismiss how challenging that can be. And we have small business owners, and you're the HR manager, the CFO, the CEO, the CISO, that can be 1 or 2 people. So we're really trying to make it as easy as we can.
That's
but
Tom in our
the
business.
The key message here is that it is important, and cybersecurity is a leadership issue. Whether you're a big business or small business, it's actually about prioritization. It's about resources, and it's about risk. Those things to me all fall into the bucket of leaders, and not necessarily something that we should be just leaving with our technical experts, even if you do have a CISO or a CAO. They're super important, and they should form the basis of any business plan.
100%. And now, like, as we kind of put together Team Australia, it's really important to make sure that everyone understands that they've got a role. It's not just, we can't leave it to go. No, we can't leave it to the individuals. We all have to kind of come together. So what are some of the lessons that you learned in your journey so far that you think are really applicable for people out there to kind of dive into it?
Yeah, so let's start with that. It's everyone's business. Industry has specific strengths and government has strengths, and they are quite unique. And I think when we collaborate and leverage each other's strengths, we are most powerful. There's actually an exponential effect, an amplifying effect, a force multiplier when we come together with that which we are best at. And I've seen that, and it's been really super. It's been inspiring, it's been energetic through both the Executive Cyber Council that was established on the day the strategy was released. We've had a second meeting of that council just this week with Minister Burke, and the working groups under
Tom,
that.
did his invite get lost in the mail? Was that... So you weren't there?
No, I wasn't.
No.
Sorry, Tom. The working groups under that, this is Australian businesses from almost every sector contributing volunteering time and expertise to look at the challenges that the nation faces, well articulated in the strategy, and identify what industry can do about it. So we have that forum, the working groups, we have the National Cyber Intelligence Partnership, where we're piloting how different parts of industry can again draw on that which they do best and actually protect Australians. So we have better threat sharing across industries that have the capability to detect imitators, to detect threats, and then to share them with those that can actually help block those threats. It's really exciting. At the moment, it's small steps, but we're proving concepts and looking then at how do we scale. So that's really important. To your question about what I've learnt, I've learnt a huge amount in such a short time, and I have a fantastic team, the National Office of CyberSecurity. You can imagine how busy we are. We are small, and we are that single door for entities who are facing a cyber incident to come to government. And what we try to do and what we've learnt is that actually having a coordinated approach to responding to an entity in crisis is the most sustainable response. It's also how we best and most rapidly reduce harm and minimise risk around the consequences. Clearly, we partner very closely with our fantastic operational elements, both the AFP and the ACSC over at ASD. That's from a technical, they are our technical and operational arms. My role really is seeking to understand and help an entity understand the consequences of a breach around privacy information, around credentials, around minimising harm across the Australian economy and across Australian individuals. It's tricky, and I hope that increasingly we are there to support an entity on their worst day when that ransom note or that cyber incident has happened.
It is making a difference because Joe Smith, from Home Affairs, I know a couple of weeks ago I was with him and he'd just done some exercise with the banks, or they're doing a lot of stuff with critical infrastructure, and was at another talk with QBE and some others, and they'd been through the process. It's good that we're testing these sorts of things. And to that point too, I think one of the good things we're trying to build, I think, in the community to back all that up is if there's a bushfire or a flood, we laud the SES for running toward that, helping people. I'd like to sort of create the same thing for cyber as well. So we can have some volunteers that go in and assist, especially smaller businesses. The bigger end of town usually get looked after in these sorts of scenarios, but we're sort of talking about trying to get a group of people together that can actually assist and back that sort of thing up as well, to help out.
Absolutely. And I think there's an underlying tone in the strategy about those that can play a key role in our cyber ecosystem. And we'd like to keep pushing threats upstream so that the individual or that brand new small business can actually rely on some protections through other aspects of Australian industry, other aspects of the ecosystem, that we can push threats off them through telcos, through banks, through the people that they engage with to build their business. You mentioned Joe. Joe is the head of my crisis response unit, and gets out, and what he's doing, and when you talked about those entities, he's out there running exercises. I can't tell you how important exercises are. They help us to actually establish that trust, those relationships, and that understanding before a crisis. And I don't just say that because I'm wearing green and I've been indoctrinated into the army exercise and planning machine that we are. But really, if we, fail to plan, then we're planning to fail.
Absolutely.
When we get out and do exercises, we do share a deep understanding on what government can do to help. And we also share those lessons that we've learnt from either incidences or other exercises. And it helps us to be connected and integrated and most efficient in our response. Those exercises, along with the incidents that we've been dealing with, is actually also driving our productivity in our playbooks. Another aspect of the strategy. We have a range of playbooks out for industry consultation right now, but the more we engage with industry, the more we can understand what is the best SOP, what is that process, where is that quick reference to what do I do when I have a cyber security incident. Those playbooks are set to help everyone from big business to small business through experience, through exercises, through managing incidences.
We've done some tabletop exercises with a business. I won't name the business, but we did a real one where it was only the CISO, myself, and one other person knew that there was going to be an actual cyber attack, but for real. And it was interesting. There was actually one girl on the team. She would have been early 20s, and she was an ex-nurse. She was the most controlled in the whole situation. There were people running around, hair on fire type stuff. And she goes, I'll go to the drawer, open it up. Remember the book? We'll go through the book and we'll go through the process and stuff. So, you can tabletop exercise as much as you want, but when a real incident happens, we practice for fire drills in buildings, all that sort of stuff. But this is key stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic feedback. I'm so glad that the playbooks are getting used.
Yeah.
And, I encourage everyone to get out and exercise. My team are available if people are having exercises and they want some support, they want some involvement, they want to understand what government can do. It really might not be the first thing in some people's minds, I should tell the government they might be able to help. We want to change that culture as well.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we share incidences, and I will give a plug for cyber.gov.au and 1300 Cyber One. If we don't report, then it's really hard for us to understand the landscape and then to mitigate. If we in my job, all of my tasks fall into three buckets: prevent, which comes to exercises and engagement and outreach and industry; prepare for, again, exercises and playbooks; and then respond to crisis. But the whole ecosystem, the more we understand it, the better we can prepare for it, the better we can build our resilience and respond rapidly. So reporting and sharing what we're seeing across the economy is super important.
And look, one of the things from the outside looking in, especially in the last 12 months, we've started to see, or my observation has been, that the government agencies are starting to get much, much better coordinated, working in response to cyber attacks, the way you're kind of sharing that information out in the public. Are you seeing there's any tangible impact on the cybercrime that's impacting Australia now that coordination's occurring?
It's such a good question, and one that we hope to measure. You can imagine it's really hard to measure. I think we're having an impact. I think that as we increase our rapid response, increase our resilience and our cybersecurity posture, we will just naturally reduce our attack surface. We'd be naive to think that we will never not be a target. The criminal component of cyber, incidents, it's insidious. It's an industrial, in some areas, an industrial-sized machine. Like, we're seeing it constant. In the last cyber security report out of ASD last year, they said one attack every 6 minutes was reported. Now, that's just that which is reported, which tells me it's just the tip of the iceberg.
And it's increasing too, because it was 1 in 8, I think, the year before. So that's shortening down that attack.
And I think we'll see, we're coming up to that time at the end of the year where we start to see reports. So I'm looking forward to seeing the next report. They are hard to measure, but as you said, if we increase the foundations across even just those three actions, we build our resilience. And as we get out and we have those fantastic technical and operational capabilities, as the AFP get out and investigate and apply sanctions against criminals, and there is a deterrent effect. And if we become a less attractive target, then we might see us being targeted less.
Yeah.
So coming in now to about the conversation that's out there with, Australia. Jason and I, up until 2022, we would have basically been going, October, Australian Cyber Week, there's all the events we have to build. Unfortunately, didn't have it last year, but, we're going to have the Australian Cyber Network this October. So we'd love to know, with the Cyber Awareness Month, what are you going to be out and about doing things? Are you going to be kind of...
Absolutely. It's a critical month.
Party month, Tom.
Yeah.
Party month.
Yeah.
Cyber party.
It's a critical time. It is called Cyber Awareness Month. I think we have to go beyond awareness. We have to change that culture.
Yep.
So I'm enlisting all the support I can get across the entire nation to actually have an impact so that we can help Australians be more cyber secure. I've spoken to some colleagues around the industry who actually have cyber hour where they sit down at the table and make sure that everyone has a device, updated their device. Do we need a safety stand down for cyber? Until we actually inculcate those actions and behaviours and it becomes second nature, maybe we do. But I'm excited about the month. I'm not going to give it all away, but I'm hoping that we'll have a big impact.
Not even one little teaser?
There'll be one. So you'll be dressed up as malware.
Yeah. You'll be dressed up as what?
Malware.
It's an interesting visual.
I wanted to kind of, culture's come up a bunch of times. Yeah. Jason and I, but Jason specifically, incredibly passionate about providing cyber education and opportunities for young women as they kind of, one of the things that we've touched on also earlier is the relationship this has to kind of the superhero motive, or as you're growing up, policeman, the SES. So, that image in my head of seeing a cyber professional ready there to support next to a policeman, next to the SES, that is really the role that it should have. How hard is that cultural change? Because I know we've really struggled to get cyber by design with startups as kind of like a core skill. But it's such an important one.
I love your visual. I often say that my team and I, Joe in his response unit, we are first responders. We are there to do immediate harm minimisation and understand consequences and reduction. I do think there is a story to be told. I think there is a narrative. That's not everyone. Our cyber field, I think, is incredibly diverse. We need cyber lawyers. We need cyber researchers. We need actual analysts. We need incident response. We need pen testers. We need strategists. So, there is a story to tell to make sure that it is not an intimidating field. Make sure that it is a welcoming field, somewhere that anyone, be it male, female, no matter what your background is, that you can actually succeed and that you are welcome. So there's we need to change that image. I certainly would like to change the image of cyber being just the black hoodie in a dark room in the basement. Now that surely appeals to some, but we need to make sure that...
We need pink hoodies.
We need pink hoodies. I think we need to make sure that the narrative is clear and there is that hook that no matter, that you belong, if you want to do it. I think we have a huge opportunity with school leavers. As you say, the strategy recognises the requirement to expand our cyber workforce so that it becomes a mainstream. We've been doing some work with some industry folk on what is our pathways and what is the framework around the cyber category or the cyber field. I think we need to make sure that those looking to change fields, coming back into the workforce, the skills you bring, there is a role across the gambit of cyber roles that we have.
Because that's we can pull people for GRC, like governance, risk and compliance, from like a legal accounting background. And Daisy Wong, who was on one of our podcasts recently, she's come out of marketing to go into cyber culture and awareness, because it's a marketing exercise to sort of sell that messaging to them. And AWSN, like the Australian Women's Security Network, I think their last report was 17% of women in cyber. We need to increase that, and neurodiversity and all those sorts of things, So that's something we're aligned with.
Those entities are doing a fantastic job at trying to promote this. We have to demystify. It's not a technical aspect. And also, I've had discussions with AWSN and other women in IT and women in security forums who really, where is it that we think IT or cyber or technical issues, there is no inherently masculine aspect to it. You don't need to have something that's inherently male. So we've just got to change our narrative to make sure that we are an open, inclusive workforce. And that is how we're going to build capability. if we can't attract the diversity, then we're really not pulling in the best that we can into the field.
Look, I know you're super busy and we've taken up a lot of your time. Is there a last message that you have for Australians out there around cyber?
It's everybody's business.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your
Get in the
time.
business, Tom. Get in the business.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys, and
Pleasure.
thanks for constantly keeping the community informed in the role that you play in elevating the field.
Well, Tom's not here for his good looks. No, he's not.
Definitely not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.